Welcome, beautiful dreamer. I'm so glad you're here. This is a space to rest, to dream, and to come home to yourself. I'm Susan Bruck, and I invite you to listen and receive. Simply let the sound, story, and stillness carry you into deeper peace. Hello, welcome to this week's podcast. Its title is The Wild and Woolly Goddess of Wonder on woolgathering, wandering imagination, and the art of spinning straw into gold. Not long ago, while I was sorting through a box of old wool puppets, I came across someone I hadn't seen in years. The wild and woolly goddess of wonder. She looked exactly as I remembered her, slightly crooked, slightly wild, made from scraps of fabric, wool, and imagination. Holding her again brought back memories of the years when wool, stories, and childlike wonder filled my days, and it set my thoughts spinning in several directions at once. You can read all about my thoughts, should you be interested in this week's Substack post, which is linked to this. But for this podcast, I wanted to share a piece of a story with you that I wrote many years ago. A few years back, probably like 13 years now, I gave myself a year-long challenge to write a children's story a week, a story along with a illustration. So this is one of those stories, which actually was a few-week story because it has several chapters. It's called The Woolgatherer, and I'm going to share with you chapters 1, 2, and 5, just to give you a little taste of this story. I hope you enjoy it. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you can hear the wind in the background, but we are in the middle of a windstorm. Winds 35 to 50 miles an hour with gusts up over 60, so it's kind of loud. But it's always a good time for a story. So here we go. The Woolgatherer by Susan Bruck. She picked another tuft of wool from the bush. Her back ached from bending and reaching, but she needed just a bit more. The shepherds laughed at her. They called her the wool-gatherer, or sometimes, "Hey, you," but she hardly minded any more. They all thought she was an old woman. That's because she had made herself a wig of white wool. They never saw her unlined face underneath, and that was how she wanted it. She couldn't remember how long it had been since she ran away from home. She remembered that life like a dream. I am a wool-gatherer in more ways than one, she thought to herself. She remembered when the balls were dances rather than puffs of wool, and they were filled with glittering chandeliers and thousands of beeswax candles that made the whole house smell like honey. She remembered women fixing her hair and dressing her for what she referred to as the ball, all in caps. Her stepsisters were very excited about the ball. They hoped to marry the prince, and he was to choose his bride at the ball. They were welcome to marry him. She wanted to read books and spin wool and be left alone. At the ball, she stayed in the shadows. She didn't like to dance. There in the shadows was where she met the princess, his sister. They spent a long time talking. They felt like old friends right from the start. The princess, Johanna, also loved to read. She liked to observe bugs. She didn't spin, but she loved to weave. Laurie could have spent forever talking to Johanna. Then he found them, the prince that is, and insisted that Laurie dance with him. Even though she didn't enjoy it, she was a decent dancer, but he wasn't. He stepped all over her feet and waltzed her right into a potted palm. He was handsome enough, but all he wanted to talk about was himself. When Laurie asked him what books he'd read lately, he laughed. He spent the rest of the evening with her, even though she encouraged him to dance with some of the other young women who were looking daggers at her. She told him she would turn into a pumpkin at midnight, and as the clock struck 12, she ran away. She had hoped he would think she was crazy and leave her alone, but no. He thought she was playing hard to get. He sent word to her father the next day that he wanted to marry her. Her stepmother tried to talk him out of saying yes when she realized Laurie wasn't interested, but her father insisted. It would be a great boon to the family, and it was important to keep the prince happy. After all, he would be king one day. Her father locked her in her room so she couldn't run away before the wedding, which was scheduled to take place in 2 weeks, on the night of the full moon. Her stepmother brought Laurie her favorite things to eat and some of her favorite books to read. Even her stepsisters tried to cheer her up. They didn't feel so jealous after meeting the prince. 10 long days passed and 10 even longer nights. As Laurie watched the 3/4 moon and willed it to get smaller instead of bigger, she heard something outside her 3rd-story window. She saw fingers on her windowsill, and then a head appeared, the head of Princess Johanna. Laurie, afraid the princess would fall, grabbed her under her arms and pulled her in. The princess was dressed all in black. On each hand and foot she'd strapped small suction cups, a bunch of them tightly tied together. As she caught her breath, she pulled them off. "They worked," she said. "I got the idea from watching my chameleon walk across the ceiling of its glass house." Laurie was speechless. She stared in amazement, but Johanna seemed quite composed. "I've come to rescue you from a fate worse than death. My brother." Chapter 2. Laurie couldn't believe it. She'd always wanted a real friend, and now she had one. Princess Johanna, who preferred to be called Jazz, had a plan. Her family had a summer cottage, more like a palace, where Jazz often went to get a break from life in court, but even there she was expected to act like a lady. Jazz had become friends with an old shepherd who lived near the cottage and didn't own any sheep. She shared her unhappiness with him, and he told her she always had a place to stay if she really wanted to get away. Tonight, Jazz had left the castle with some money and 2 horses, intending never to return. She really hoped Laurie would join her. Laurie felt a pang of sadness about leaving her stepmom. She quickly wrote her a note and left it inside one of her stepmom's books, sticking out just a little so she would see it. She didn't tell her where they were going. She didn't even know. But she thanked her for all she had done and promised to send word when she could. They rode all night long and through the morning. Laurie wasn't used to riding, and her legs and bottom were sore, but she held on. Her life had been given back to her, and she would do whatever it took. They rode past the cottage palace, and Jazz said they were almost there. Laurie imagined the shepherd living in a little hut with a straw roof and dirt floors. She wondered if he would really be happy to have not only a princess, but also her brother's runaway fiancé living with him. She hoped so. Saul laughed with gladness when he saw Jazz, and welcomed Laurie as well. He was an old man with sparkly blue eyes and a big bush of white hair that stood every which way on his head. The house turned out to be built of stone and had wood plank floors polished until they shone like gold. It had 2 bedrooms on the 2nd floor and the main living space below. It was definitely not a hut. One room was for Laurie and Jazz to share. "This is where I started my new life, and I'm happy to help you start yours," he said. "But you will have to help. This house doesn't take care of itself, although sometimes the food does cook itself." He winked. Jazz pulled open the wardrobe in their room. Both girls gasped as they saw it already contained clothes. Simple, hand-spun, but colorful. There were more than enough for both of them. Dresses and also pants and shirts plus 2 warm, fuzzy jackets. Jazz and Laurie stared in amazement. Had Saul known they were coming? They looked at him and he winked again. "Simpler clothes will suit your life here," he said. "And pants for you, Jazz. I know you prefer them. But now you both need rest." He pulled 2 white nightshirts out of the bottom dresser drawer. The girls washed up and changed. When they came back to their room, they found a platter with bread, cheese, and apples, along with some buttermilk. They decided that Saul's house was a magical place. And now we skip ahead in our story to chapter 5. "What's your brother's name?" Jazz had just taken the cape off of the loom. The girls had decided to make a cape for Saul. It was blue like the night with stars and swirling light. The girls were attaching the ties, which matched the bottom edging. They were quite pleased with their work. "What?" asked Jazz. "What's your brother's name? I never heard him called anything but Prince or the Prince." Prince the Toad stopped snoring and opened one eye. "You know," Jazz answered, "he must have a name, but I don't know it. Ever since I was little, I only ever remember him being called Prince. It's kind of sad, don't you think? Do you think he liked that?" They held up the cape to admire their handiwork. It matched the night sky except for the bands at the top and bottom. Laurie wanted Jazz to try it on so she could see how it looked, but Jazz didn't want to. Prince hopped from Laurie's lap onto the table and stopped right by the cape. "He wants to try it on," said Jazz. "Maybe he really is Saul and knows that this is for him." "Maybe our cape is magic and will turn him back into himself," said Laurie. Prince was hopping up and down so quickly that he slipped off the edge of the table and landed on his back. Then he didn't move at all. Jazz picked him up. His heart was still beating, but he wasn't moving. They hoped he wasn't badly hurt. They looked at each other and knew what they needed to do. Laurie spread out the cape and Jazz put Prince on it. They wrapped it all around him, so just his little toady head was sticking out. He lay completely still for what seemed like a very long time. His only movement was his throat expanding and contracting. Laurie ran and got a little scrap of cloth, wet it, put a few drops of lavender oil on it, and laid it over Prince's forehead. They smiled to see that ugly toad all wrapped up like that. Soon he began to stir, but something strange was happening. Laurie and Jazz jumped back so they wouldn't get hit by the rapidly growing toad. The scrap of cloth from his forehead fell to the ground, but Prince was all tangled up in the cloak. He was surely a person now, but they couldn't see his face. "Saul!" they both shouted. But a muffled voice said, "It's Joseph." The voice sounded familiar. "Who?" "Joseph." The shape struggled to get out of the cape. Jazz and Laurie were too astonished to help, but soon a head emerged. "But you know me as Prince," he said. Sure enough, it was the Prince. Jazz tried to help him get out of the cape. "You might not want to do that. I don't seem to be wearing any clothes." Jazz ran upstairs and brought down a pair of her pants and a shirt. Then she and Laurie turned their backs, while Joseph got dressed. Snip, snap, snout. This tale is all told out. That's all of the story that you're going to hear today of the Woolgatherer. I certainly hope that you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts or questions if you have any, and thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the Beautiful Dreamer Society podcast. Until next time, this is Susan Bruck, and I wish you healing rest, sweet dreams, and deep peace.